So there is a video in the quantum leaping arena that has gone viral by a creator who actually I really respect a lot. Although our lanes are different, I find that there are some parallels. But there's an interesting topic that I'd like to raise for your discussion, or at least to think about it. Not everybody wants to participate, and that's fine. And that is the whisper method. And you know it's got to be good to get me on camera. No, I'm just kidding. I like to shake it up a bit sometimes. So the whisper method goes like this. You use your manifestation abilities. You go into meditation and you visualize and you think about your person of interest. And you do this repetitively over time until you imagine them in their kitchen or in their residence. Let's say they're at the sink washing dishes, and it's so crystal clear that you can walk up to them and almost touch them. And then you whisper in their ear exactly what you want them to do. How do you feel about that? Just at first pass. Because my initial reaction, and again, for those of you who've been following me for a while, you know that one of my shadow patterns is fake politeness. And that is being inclusive of everybody and saying, oh yes, there's it, even when you don't actually agree. So I am breaking that pattern and saying, I feel like it's effed up on a number of levels. And here's why. And then I'm going to defend her point of view because it's actually quite interesting. So the reason I feel like it's messed up is that if you need to actually repetitively go into manifestation and visualization and to whisper in somebody's ear to do your bidding, then you are exercising a high level of manipulation and control, which as a reality shifter, I personally believe actually is to your disadvantage. Because what it does is that if it works, and I do believe, reading the comments, there are several people that I worked for, and they were like, he texted me. I was like, which version? Which version? The one that you remember? Or have you now told the simulation to load a version that is completely unconscious, that is susceptible to doing your bidding and to be completely oblivious to it? Okay, because here's the thing. There is a level of awakening that many of us, yourself, myself included, that are experiencing, which is we can feel each other. We can feel each other's energy. We can feel each other's intent and emotions. And sometimes my reality shifting clients are surprised by this because I call them out. And this is part of the leveling up. You know, like the 3D paradigms no longer work anymore, where we're just going to pretend like everything's okay. And we can all feel it under the surface. And it's practice, right? I'm still practicing, but I take the lead in my client work and I'm like, hey, are you triggered? Are you bothered? And I give clients room to say no or to grow into that next level relationship. It's ultimately the goal, right? So when you do a manifestation or a spell, I don't like love spells for the same reason. When you do something like this, you are essentially hooking yourself to somebody that is unconscious. Because as you awaken on the journey, you are going to magnetize with your auric energy field those that are in alignment with you. And when you are prioritizing to the universe that you want somebody that is dead in the brain, right? That can be washing dishes, you using your powers to insert yourself on top of them and to be like, you will come back to me. You will sleep with me. You know, like it's creepy, right? It's creepy. If a heterosexual guy made that content, wow, wow, we would all be lit up in flames and the Me Too movement would be targeting that guy, right? It's not okay to psychically rape people. And this is why I'm not a proponent of love spells. It's not okay to, from your wounded place, your egoic place, and I'm not talking to the creator, I'm talking to the ethereal you, of course, nobody, right? But as an example, when we manifest from a wounded place like that, what it does is it wreaks havoc in our life because of a heavy, heavy shadow pattern that is active. Because if we need to manipulate or con or cheat or lie or steal, right? If we need to do that, then we're operating from a scarcity mindset. And that's why I really like one of the commenters on that video that said a high level of maturity is needed to do this because it can go wrong. And when I have done things like this, operating from scarcity mindset, I have been met with my shadow. And I love that they wrote that comment because that's exactly what would happen, in my opinion. Now, what's interesting is that the creator actually says in the comments a couple of things because it's pretty controversial. A lot of people are like, what about free will? And the creator says that, first of all, because we are all from the same source and we are all each other, we're just different. This is me adding words now. We're different iterations, we're different angles, we're different fragments of the same, right? We're doing it to ourselves. And so it's not like we're really harming anybody because we're actually doing it to ourselves. And the second thing is that they said that I thought was very, very important is that there's no karma. And personally, I do believe that there are multi-worlds. And I also believe that we can all be sharing content, but we're not all sharing the same world. And so it could be that that creator is actually in a simulated version where there's not karma. For me, working with people's shadow is my specialty. And I just have to say, I'm really glad that there's karma, and I don't want to be in a world where there's not karma, because looking around at some of the content that's being made about what's happening in the world, oh my God, can you imagine if people could do anything that they wanted without any repercussions, and they're leveling up and they're having magical or occult-like abilities? Think about the children, right? There are some really twisted mofos out there. I'm just going to say it. And we need to be mindful of saying things like, or creating things like worlds without karma. Because as we progress through the levels of sentience, when you're at a juvenile level, you do some really effed up things. And that's just the reality. And that's just part of growing. I'm not talking about human age. I'm actually talking about the levels of wisdom and the levels of awakening. And this indicates to me that this creator has not been exposed to some aspects of humanity, probably because of the world that they're in. And so they're like, there's no karma. There's no such thing for karma. We don't need it. We're going to throw it out. And having been and knowing people that have had others try to insert themselves on top of us against our will, sometimes without our knowledge, without our consent, and doing it using some of these abilities, it's really disturbing. And it's really disturbing when it happens, because you're like, I know you signed me up for your manifestation, but I don't consent to that. I'm not going along. I'm in an issue right now in my 3D reality that I'll talk about in an upcoming episode about this. It's like, I didn't ask for that type of attention from you. And I'm sorry that you now have a rejection wound that is active, and you're now taking it out on me and affecting my life and my little baby's life. Like, I'm glad that there are systems of checks and balances, but it's intriguing to think about. So under these two conditions, If we all are one and the same and there is no karma, then is it ethical to do this? I would say yes, because what is going to happen is there's going to be a reciprocal lesson. There's going to be a shadow lesson that comes out as a result, because you do get what you wish for, and it teaches you why you're not in alignment when it goes wrong. And in a world without karma, I personally believe that this is a nightmare realm. And I don't want any part of that. But in terms of the bigger picture and in terms of our learning experience, it is a viable option. And I do actually think that it would be interesting to watch from afar to see how that plays out. And it also communicates that that modality, that creator, probably hasn't experienced the level of connection that they will probably end up experiencing, because at some point on the awakening journey, you can't do that in secret. There are no more shadows anymore. And that's a big part of the 5-dimensional shift that we're all entering into. It's like when you're working with other people that are awake, right? They feel you, they know you, and they're going to be like, was that so-and-so trying to whisper in my ear? Trying to get me to whatever it is, right? It's like, like, for example, I had a situation in Costa Rica, soul friends, soul family. We were sitting around a table, passing around. I brought a vape pen that had cannabis in it, and I don't partake right now, but I was sharing it, and we were all in conversation, and I was sitting next to somebody that was spiritually awakened, and they were being polite, artificially polite, and they wanted another hit. And I was in the middle of a conversation. I could feel that. And instead of using their words, I could feel them actually trying to mind control me. Not like, not like completely mind control, but they were using their powers to will me to pass them the vape pen, instead of, I guess, facing the embarrassment of having to ask. And it's interesting because there was somebody else at the table who I was repelled from that person. So I discontinued a friendship. That's what happens, right? You expose yourself, and whether or not people talk about it, whether or not people have a conversation about it, the consequences are still there. I was interested in pursuing a friendship with that person, but it repelled me. And I found it to be a little too icky. And it felt, this. And there was another person who I did develop a friendship with temporarily. And they were in financial difficulties. And I was in a different position, and I could be a little more generous. I could feel them in need at times, and so I would preemptively give to them, and I could feel them not wanting to ask. And especially for things like cigarettes, when I smoked, I don't anymore. And so I thought of this, because we were up on a mountain, I thought of this way that I could give them money, and in a way that would be mutually beneficial. And so I asked them to essentially be my Uber Eats person, to go to the grocery store, which I would have to have paid an Uber person anyway. And then I would pay them money for the gas and the trip, and then also buy them smokes. And this actually worked out very well for us until they really, really hit dire straits and started messing with the change. And I started just watching them. And I could tell that it was down to like food. And so I didn't say anything. And when they eventually did get money, they made it right, and they took me out to dinner, and they took somebody else out. We all went out, and they bought all the drinks. all the food and more than made up for the little change. But it was almost like this ethical thing, like I could feel it, I could sense it. And I knew that they were in a really, really tight position and that they were stealing my change because they needed to. And I was just observing it, but they made it right in actually more ways than one. And so I forgave them, but we still keep our distance, because of that. So that's what I'm saying about these types of relationships. Like when you are on the awakening journey, you are going to feel people's shadow. You're going to see how they behave when they think that they can't be seen. And if you have to resort to whispering in somebody's ear to get them to do your will, your bidding, then imagine turning on the lights and they turn around in meditation and they say, "What are you doing? How do you feel?" If you feel shame, then you're doing something wrong. Period. Period. Because that's where we're all getting to collectively, is turning on the lights and seeing people deeply, without reservation, without recoiling. And that's what all of this is about. This entering into the age of Aquarius, this collective awakening, everything is getting exposed, including the games that people play in the shadows. And we will continue to see multiple occurrences of this. So listen, I am a reality shifting coach, and my specialty is actually helping people through their shadows without the embarrassment. Ideally, without the embarrassment. Sometimes people get a little embarrassed when they realize that they're seen. I have witnessed it all. I have to tell you, I have seen some wild, wild things. And we try to normalize it, try to break down the barriers of hiding and get you past it so you don't sabotage any more friendships or relationships. When I saw this perpetual pattern, I had a friend come and stay with me and started stealing from me in the shadows. And I'm like, I can feel you. I can feel you, And anyway, so that's when I was like, I'm not doing this in my personal life anymore. This is now a profession. This is a profession. And I'm really good at what I do. So if you feel the call to work with me, to work through your triggers, to understand why you're bombing your relationships inadvertently, advertently, whatever it is, your patterns, and if you want to shift into a different reality where you can turn the lights on and you can stand barefaced in front of the person that you love, then I'm your person. Feel free to email me at sacredjourneyproductions@gmail.com. We'll talk soon.